Well, everyone, welcome to our first episode of what are we calling this? Turf talk time with the tool, something like that. Maybe it's a title work in progress, but this is turf talk with a tool on my Tuesday turf talk with the tool. But we are honored to have as a guest our interviewee Ross Kurcab. Ross, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good here, Denver, Colorado. Thanks for having me
Ross,
on.
oh, you bet. Thanks for coming. This is an honor. I kind of wanted to start just by you telling us who you are, what you've done. What's your story?
How much time do you have?
Yeah, well,
Like,
right. Let's keep it a brief overview.
there you go. And it's pretty simple. I was head field manager in terms of my turf life, head field manager for the Denver Broncos for 30 years. And about 7 years ago, finished up with that after 30 years, wanted to see what weekends and holidays were like, and decided to start my own consulting business, Championship Sports Turf Systems, or just CSTS, or just Ross Kurcab, as everyone knows me. And so self-employed, working from home, job creator of one, and lights are still on. Proud alumni of Colorado State University's turfgrass management program many years ago. And so, yeah, doing turfgrass, soils, and sports field consulting now. And it's pretty simple and to the point there. That works.
That's perfect. No, you broke up on my end for just a second, and I don't know if you broke up for everybody else. I just wanted to repeat. So, did you say that you were the turf superintendent for the Denver Broncos for 30 years?
That's correct. Head field manager was my
Head
title,
field
but
manager.
yes.
There we go. Yeah, head field manager. I don't want to get that wrong. I think there are some like touchy title things there where people have gotten offended before, so we need to make sure to get that right.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't worry. I don't get offended.
I
But,
figured.
just his superintendents in the industry is kind of associated with golf course work.
Oh, okay. See, I told you. I knew there were like subtle nuances there, but I'll be better next time. So,
Oh,
man,
even with sports field managers, there is difference of opinion.
yeah, a hierarchy. I know. I've come across it before. Uh, I think our topic for today was going to be a very timely one because a lot of people are dealing with it right now, and the heat of the summer. We were going to talk about heat stress on grass in general, and we figured being in Denver, you guys probably have some heat come in. Even though you're a mile high up there, there's still some heat that comes in. And what type of grass did you have up there when you were in Denver?
Well, I'm still here in Denver, but at the stadium field, we were growing 100% perennial ryegrass field. It was a part of a grass master. I heard some bad noise, like I cut out. Am I still there?
Yeah, you're here now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. We grew the Grassmaster hybrid system, which was a fiber reinforced system and just a lot of overseeding. So we stuck with perennial ryegrass. But, in terms of just general grass types, we're considered basically cool season grass region.
I got
And
you.
in
Which makes
terms,
sense.
yeah, so predominantly the lawns around here are going to be Kentucky bluegrass lawns, some fescue lawns, stuff like that. Although we are on the southern edge of kind of that cool season grass zone. And, briefly for maybe some listeners that don't know, there are basically two types of grasses based on their metabolic pathways: cool season grasses and warm season grasses. And it might be redundant, but it's important to know that difference because in different parts of the country, in different climatic areas, different grasses are going to perform differently. So when we're talking about summer heat stress, we're generally talking about the cool season grasses grown in the northern, roughly 2/3 of the U.S. Don't generally see heat stress as much on warm season grasses, although it can happen. And then, the other thing is that it's not just a matter of, it's really chronic heat stress that we're dealing with, not acute. So,
Gotcha.
for example, every grass is going to have some point at which you put them in the oven or whatever. At some point, they're going to just die from that high temperature. But over the course of the summer, after several weeks, cool season grasses start suffering from chronic heat stress, which is more just kind of a weakening and slowing down of the metabolism. Generally isn't going to kill the grass, but might make it weak and prone to some other kind of stress or disease or insect pests or something like that might. So it's kind of a good idea to have a few fundamental ideas there. Warm season grasses in the south, things like Bermuda grass, St. Augustine grasses, some of the paspalums, centipede grass, things like that are going to tolerate the heat much more. So in Denver, when we get up in the upper 90s and low 100s, we can grow Bermuda grasses here, for example. And there is a middle area of the country that's really neither cool season zone or warm season grown. It kind of goes through the mid belt of the country. And that's often called the transition zone, where technically we're taught that you can grow both kind of grasses there, cool season and warm season. So something like Tennessee, Kansas City, kind of that latitude area in there. And it stretches across the country, but we've sports field managers learned long ago that it's not where you can grow both kind of grasses. It's where you can't really grow either kind very well. And so having that kind of basic knowledge of the climatic zones and different kind of grasses, most of what we're talking about is cool season grasses, northern part of the country, and chronic heat stress over a period of time.
So that's perfect, Ross, that you went through all of that, because I forgot to tell everybody that what this I don't know, interview, what are we calling this, show whatever we're calling this, what it's about is trying to pick the brains of some of these guys who have been in the industry and who are literally professionals and who know way more than we do as homeowners. So I am a homeowner, and my knowledge is just gained from watching YouTube and this sort of thing. So it's awesome that these guys are all in this Discord chat and they're letting us pick their brains about some of these things they've learned over the course of their career or even in their education, and basically trying to dumb it down to my level. So Ross got ahead of me there, and he, even though I didn't say anything, that was perfect. And you fill us in on kind of the background of why we're even talking about this. So I guess the first section, we wanted to kind of divide it up into little sections. And if we talk about watering, what about irrigation first? So heat stress and irrigation. Do cool season grass. We'll throw a tidbit in about warm season grass at the end, but let's just talk about cool season grass, heat stress. Like you said, that's the most common anyway. So irrigation, what's kind of your pro tips in that section?
Well, sure. And again, just to reinforce, knowing what kind of grass and even kind of what kind of cool season grass you have, what variety, what species of grass really helps you manage it better. But in general, when we're talking about irrigation, this would be really time of day is the important thing during the hot summer months. Fungal disease especially is a big stressor in chronically heat stress grass and even to some degree healthy grasses. So what we want to do is break that cycle of moisture on the grass at least once a day if we can. And in very humid regions, that's very tricky to do. But the best time of day to water is very early morning, late at night for a lot of reasons. First off, you're going to have the least amount of wind generally then, and not have as much waste and things like that. More importantly, though, it'll give the grass canopy, the blades time to dry during the day. That can break the disease cycle of some fungus and even slow it down enough to where it only becomes a nuisance instead of something more serious. So really, when we talk about irrigation during the summer months, warm season or cool season would be the time of day you're doing it's really important. Other things is, obviously you can put, it's kind of going off on a tangent, but cool season grasses can go into dormancy during the summertime. But if you put enough water on them, generally, they're not going to. So the choice is yours, your amount of water and everything like that. Some people don't mind and even tolerate a little bit of brown grass during the summer in their cool season grasses. Cut the water back. You probably want to give it at least a ½ inch a week just to keep the crowns hydrated. And you can put it into a dormancy, re-irrigate again, start up again in the fall when temperatures are cooler, and bring it back out of dormancy. That's a little bit tricky because you're really riding it on the edge. I wouldn't maybe recommend that for the average homeowner, but it can work on large scale things like parks and things like that to save a lot of water or you might see that on a lot of school ball fields, for example, that football fields, for example, that aren't being really used during the summertime. Give them some dormancy, save some water, less maintenance costs, and then you can bring it back. But in terms of irrigation, you don't want to skimp on it during the heavy summer months. We talk about a number called ET, evapotranspiration. Pretty simple to Google and find a local report, but it's essentially a way that you can calculate roughly how much water your lawn would need on a daily basis. And in the summertime and the heat and the stress, cool season grasses, that can easily be at least an inch, inch and a half, even 2 inch a week requirements, between natural precip like rainfall plus irrigation. So the water requirements during the hottest summer 3 months, really, in my experiences, are going to dwarf the amount of water you're going to have to put on in spring and fall.
So
One more thing.
Rule, there's a big range there on the amount of water.
Sure, exactly. You might be,
you were starting to say something else. Did I interrupt you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, cut out. I thought you were done.
Go for it.
Yeah, you got it exactly right. You're just not going to water evenly throughout the year. You see that out west here more where more irrigation systems are predominant, but everywhere. And people tend to set their irrigation controllers and let them kind of run that same program all year. And what I'll see around in Denver is, overwatering in the spring and then underwatering because they don't adjust. So just knowing that you're going to have to adjust your irrigation cycle is good enough for that. And quite honestly, today, some of the newer smart controllers that you can get are really amazing. What they can do is they can go online and get this information for you and essentially calculate how much water you might need. So really good idea, especially when you're on summer vacation or something like that. You can check in with your phone. You can get all the data on how much water you've used and everything like that. And quite honestly, these controllers are very affordable nowadays too. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. One last thing I wanted to mention on irrigation with summer heat stress. One thing we do on sports fields a lot, you'll see maybe on golf courses, is syringing the grass. It's called, it's a very quick, light shot of water, barely enough to wet the canopy of the grass. Now, you want to be careful because that goes against what I said, trying to break that wetness cycle and the moisture cycle every day in the canopy. But in a drier area where it's not really humid and hot, a light shot of water during the mid-afternoon has shown that it can cool that canopy temperature down a little bit, maybe have it in heat stress for a shorter period of time every day. So that's what I have on watering.
Yeah, no, I got you. And then if that was cool season grass, like you said, warm season grass, not so much, but I guess it's just a real quick general rule of thumb for how much water on a let's go with a warm season lawn in the middle of the summer. How many inches per week? Or
well, again, I generally the water use requirements in the higher temperatures is going to be higher, but with warm season grasses, oftentimes like Bermuda grass, actual water use rates might be lower. So I hate to just draw out blanket numbers. This information is really pretty available. I mean, I could just go on Google and type Denver lawn ET, and there'll be several good sources. And like I said, they even controllers and that can go online automatically and get this info for you. But in general, again, I tend to look at during the times of year where it's not growing very actively and not very warm in the spring, very little on warm season grasses, quarter, half inch a week, maybe, but again, a real general rule. And then up to an inch and a half per week during the summertime. And it really depends too on your level of quality, type of grass. And even within grasses, say you're growing a Bermuda grass lawn, some Bermuda grasses are better at tapping water deeper in the root zone and better in drought situations than others. So really hard to do what I call a cookbook recipe on irrigation. You really have to, wherever you live, you really have to kind of, it's not that hard to figure out, but should be most importantly, talking about how many inches of water per week you're putting out, not minutes, because minutes might work for your zone, but if you were to call someone and say, I'm running 20 minutes a day, that could mean a tenth of an inch, or that could mean, half an inch, depending on the irrigation system and the head and all that kind of stuff. So get a rain gauge, stick it out under your sprinkler system, run them 30 minutes, do a test for each zone, and you know how much water your irrigation system is applying in terms of inches per hour. So, for example, if you put a rain gauge out, you can get these at almost any garden center, and you put it under zone 1, run it for 30 minutes, and you get a half inch of water, your precip rate is an inch an hour. And so you can kind of calculate, I need a half inch of water, I'm going to have to run 30 minutes on that zone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I love it. And I think this is going to be a source of, I don't know if I should say frustration, but where we homeowners, we want you to just tell us the right answer. So when I'm saying, how many inches of water am I supposed to put down a week? And you're like, well, it's more complicated than that, because you know so much more about grass than we do. So it's like, you know all the variables that come into play. Whereas we're like, no, I just want to know how many inches. And so it's not quite that simple to answer that question. But no, I love it though. Like, I'm going to force you guys a little bit in these interviews to give us some hard numbers just as ballparks. And you can give the disclaimers like, oh, it's not, not quite that simple. But if I had to put a number to it, so I appreciate it.
If I had to this summer, in the summertime, I would look between 1 and 2 inches a week for a high quality expectation lawn, warm or cool season. But again, with all the caveats.
Right. So then let's move on from irrigation to fertilizing. Start with cool season grass, just like you did last time.
Yeah. In the summer heat, when it's not growing as much, you're not going to be experiencing as much growth above the soil, or certainly not as much root growth as you would in the spring and fall on cool season grasses. And generally, you want to match your fertility with, kind of the growth rate of the grass. So during the times of year when the grass is more actively growing, its requirements are up, you're going to fertilize a little more at higher rates, so let's say. But during the summer, for cool season grass under heat stress, I generally cut it back fairly strong, but you don't want to cut it out entirely. You don't have nearly the depth of root zone that you're going to have in the spring and fall on a cool season grass. So one rule of thumb that might help, and really I tend to use for the summer months, is I don't really cut back, especially on a sports field, cut back on nitrogen fertilization. For example, I may change the kinds and types of fertilizer I'm going to use, but what I do is try to do it more frequently and lighter. So how often, let's say you're fertilizing every 6 weeks, for example, on a luxury plan, something like that during the active growing season. You might cut that back and go half rate every 3 weeks, because you're just not going to be able to take advantage of any fertilizer that works very deep in the root zone when your roots are shallowed up, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
So, back to the rule of thumb thing, I would say fertilize the same you normally do when it's not in heat stress. Just do it more frequently and lighter, so that it's same total amounts, but you just don't go as heavy on any one fertilization.
Any difference on N versus P versus K there?
You could get any opinion you want really on a lot of that. I generally, and again, there's a lot of caveats, look for a good balanced one, and something that's going to be in that 20%. I don't want a very, what we call a hot fertilizer during the summer months, which would be, I tend to shy away from the quickly available sources of nitrogen. There's some school of thought that says, an incredible school of thought that says, beyond nitrogen, P and K in most lawns, you're not going to have a deficit there, so you're not going to get much of a response from applying it. At the same time, not everyone agrees with that, so I always generally go, hey, just go middle ground, a good balanced fertilizer. You don't want anything that's going to be very quick. If you look on the label, you'll see water-soluble and water-insoluble sources of nitrogen. And the water-soluble ones are going to be the ones that are quickly released, can really kind of spike up the salt level in the water for a little bit and kind of put the grass into stress. And it's almost like a big sugar cookie, It might look good, but it's going to really push a lot of top growth at the expense of even more roots. So if anything, you want to kind of stay lean on the nitrogen. I like to see if you're going to use organic fertilizers, this is the time of year to do it because of the warmer soil temperatures that are required to break down the organics and release the nitrogen. So it's a good way of, number one, adding some good organic matter into your soil, which is always a good idea. And number two, it's a slow release form of nitrogen that's going to not really jolt it so quickly.
Gotcha. So, and then I don't know, just a quick blurb, like you said, warm season grasses are easier, but fertilization in the middle of the summer for warm season grasses.
Yeah, so it's going to be a little bit opposite of the cool season grasses because in the warm season grasses, they do actively their best growth in the summertime, in the warmer temperatures. So again, going back to that rule of thumb, the time when the grass is most actively grown is the time to put the most fertilizer on. So these summer 3 months would be the time you probably put, maybe 2/3 of your fertilizer budget for the year on your lawn during these 3 months. And, again, comes down to expectation. How often do you want to mow? But you're not going to generally have that risk like you might have, like, the sugar cookie analysis for cool season grass. It's not such a quick stimulating flush of top growth at the expense of root growth that you're going to see. You're not going to see that on warm season grasses as much. So much less of a chance of overstimulating grass from fertilizer with warm season grass. And quite honestly, a lot of people get pretty aggressive with their fertilizer if they really want that turf in nice condition in the summertime. So that could be something as much as 1.5 pounds, even a month, roughly. That's pretty heavy shot though.
Right. No, very
But in
cool.
general, warm season grass, you're going to be more aggressive with fertilizers in the summer because they can handle it.
Sure. I think the third and final kind of subheading here is like cultivation practices. You do cultivation practices for uh,
You broke
cool
up
season
there.
grasses for summer.
Okay.
Oh, did you?
No, I got that. I got it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the question was on cultivation practices for cool season grasses in the warm summer months.
You got it.
Generally, again, these are kind of things that are going to take some recovery on the grass, either aerification, things like top dressing or anything aggressive like that. Doesn't mean you can't do them, and it certainly won't hurt, but it's just another added stress when the grass is not actively growing very quickly to recover from that stress. So as long as you can kind of baby it along a little bit, the best time for cool season grasses to cultivate, especially on lawns, would be things like core aerification. I recommend highly the spring and fall months when you've got a lot more active root growth and can repair better and more easily. It's not under a state of heat stress like it is now. So in general, you want to kind of back off cultivation of cool season grasses. Again, warm season grasses, that might be your next question. The direct opposite. It's growing actively. Now is the time to be doing cultivative in general, to be doing cultivation practices on warm season grasses. So things like, spiking, slicing, verticutting, especially on warm season grasses during the summer is really important. What we old timers call vertical mowing. So the direct opposite, you would ramp that up during the summertime because warm season grasses are growing faster.
I like it. Yeah. And I think this is perfect. Like I said, we're kind of making a lot of assumptions here, but this is for the guys who are just getting started, the homeowners like me who are trying to learn a little bit.
And I would just add that. Could I add maybe one more thing in too? When you've got the grass under stress like that, is be on the lookout for pests, and that can be everything from diseases and funny discolorations and things like that. Most people have some sort of a county extension agent through their local land grant university, or call your state university and look for the plant diagnostics labs, and they can take in samples, tell you what you might have, so you might be able to manage your way out of it or take other corrective measures if you need to. Insect pests are typically going to be more prevalent on grasses in stress, so be on the lookout for any insect damage as well.
Gotcha. Well, I
They
think that
are.
was great. Very informative. I just want to say thanks for doing this. Thanks for taking your time and letting us ask you questions. Like I said, pick your brain.
Sure.
I kind of just want to open it up to Q&A. If there's anybody out there, I'm not able to look at my phone right now. I'm driving, but if maybe Spin and Evie can help me out and let people ask questions and figure that process out, maybe do some Q&A from the crowd.
Yeah, if anybody has a question, there should be like a little handprint. You can tap on that, and then we'll bring you up for you to ask your questions. If there's any questions out there. In the meantime, hey, Ross, when you had the stitch system put in, did you find a big difference on how well that performed on your field? You know, with the cuts the players made on the field with that the Stitch Master going in?
Yeah, well, the system was called Grassmaster. It's still a product out there. And yeah, I think we had really good success with that. You know, every application is different. You got to do your homework on a stadium field like that gets that many events and everything like that. But we wanted to try something different. You know, one thing is the system performed fantastically. There kind of comes a economic pressure in stadiums. I'm sure our friend Jeff Salmon could relate with concerts or other non-sporting events that really almost make you know, changing out the grass and sodding a necessity these days to get through the season. And it's not really just to get through the football season; it's because of all the other events that might go on it. So when you have a fiber reinforced soil like that, it kind of precludes you from being able to dig out 1.5 inch thick and put in heavy, thick sod in the middle of the season to repair it. So with those limitations, the performance I thought was fantastic. Always ranked high, and most importantly, the club liked it. They wouldn't have kept it 14 years.
Yeah, no, it seemed to perform really well on cool season grasses. I don't think it'll do too much with Bermuda type of grass, but yeah, especially cool season grass, it looked like it performed really well.
Yeah, and it really that's why we grew ryegrass on it in general. You know, bunch type grasses aren't going to thatch up in general as much. And when you thatch over that fiber reinforced root zone, now you have a loose thatch material on top of a firm reinforced root zone. And that can get, especially when it gets to cleating depth, can end up being, you know, like a loose piece of carpet on tile and just make for a shear zone and a lot of divoting. So you really have to be careful running those kind of systems. And again, it goes back to a good point we were talking about, is knowing what grass you're growing and how to manage it. I think it's, you know, people may say I have Kentucky bluegrass, for example, on their lawn, but there's a lot of differences in some 300 varieties of Kentucky bluegrass.
Right.
And there can be a pretty big difference range in things like drought tolerance, cold tolerance, tolerance to certain disease pressures, things like that. So knowing what you have really helps.
Yeah, very true, very true. Anybody have any questions? Just hit that palm print. Might be at the bottom of your phone to ask a question if you have a question. I can't believe you had your ryegrass though. That I thought for sure you had bluegrass on there. Looked like it played like bluegrass, but you just have.
Yeah, well, originally when we built the system, we soldered it because we didn't have much time for grass establishment with a bluegrass sod, and then stitched fibers through that. But with as much wear and tear and heavy overseeding as we were doing with ryegrass, and you know, every couple of years we would come in with the top maker and take off all the grass and just expose the fibers and reseed it. After 1 or 2 of those, there wasn't really any bluegrass left, so it just pretty much became a ryegrass game. And quite honestly, it wouldn't work, I don't think, in the NFL pure ryegrass field without fiber reinforcement. That's just my opinion. I think, I want to say the Cincinnati Reds Stadium, last I knew, and maybe they still do, was 100% ryegrass field, which to me is guts. In the Midwest with that humidity and gray leaf spot pressures,
Yeah,
that's, you know, that's courage.
yeah, because I know bluegrass is.
But it always looked beautiful when I see it.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to believe you had ryegrass, man. That's a lot of kudos to you, because that's one tough grass to keep going and overseed all the time. And you know, our Super Bowl fields, when we did Super Bowl fields, we always went in and overseeded their original native field, and we'd put, ryegrass on it. We'd have to overseed it and pre-germinate barrels and barrels and barrels of it. But now Eddie Mangan, he gets that new sod every year, growing on plastic. It's Bermuda, but yeah, on my Bermuda fields, I like to have a little bit of thatch there to catch the cleat. So if they
Exactly,
do,
yeah.
it comes right back. So there's two different philosophies and practices on cool season grasses and Bermuda type fields. But wow, that's pretty impressive that you had ryegrass.
Yeah, well, it's different practices, but the same basic principle is you've got that tough Bermuda base and mat down there when you're overseeing the Super Bowl field and growing the ryegrass for color and some added, growth and stability to the grass.
Yep.
So if you didn't have that tough base down there, it might not be so good.
Yeah.
And it just, we can go off on a tangent, but it's not the best by itself. Where you had the Bermuda mat and base down there for a good, tough footing base, I had the fibers.
Right. Yeah.
So,
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, sand alone, Dr. McNitt, Penn State, taught me this, and I think makes a great point. Sand, if you just removed all the grassroots and everything and played on a sand-based football field, it would be a disaster for footing. Sand, we designed these sands and everything to be stable and all this, but it's still not going to work without some kind of, it's the grass that makes it work. And, ryegrass is going to need a little bit of help with that, but then you can take all the advantages of ryegrass and quick germination and things.
Yeah. You still there?
Oh, did we lose him?
I don't know. Still there?
All of a sudden went silent.
He's probably still talking to his phone.
Wonder if he hit the mute button.
Oh,
No,
he hit the mute button.
Oh, there he was.
Ross.
Yeah, now you're on, Ross.
Ross, you there? I don't think so.
Well, that was kind of our goal. That was a 30-minute sort of interview session, and I thought it went really well.
Yeah, see, he grew ryegrass on his field. So ryegrass and cool season grass is kind of in season during football season, but Bermuda is not.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people don't really put that two and two together. You only got 120 days to grow Bermuda if you're lucky. Especially in Oklahoma and stuff. And by the time they start practicing and having games, your Bermuda is on its way down, as where cool season grass is on its way up. So you have that to help you along the season too. So basically, you're playing on your dormant Bermuda for the rest of the season. And it's overseeded with rye, of course, but it's two different philosophies and types. But yeah, I don't know.
Well, Spin, do we have any kind of a speculative preview of the next guests that we might be lucky enough to have on the show?
I don't know about maybe Travis Hogan might be available. I know he's on vacation this week. So,
we won't bother him on his vacation, I guess.
Right. And then, Doc Green and Jay's having something going on this Thursday, talking about growth regulators and the GDD and how to put all that and use the app to find out when your next application of your growth regulator is due. It's pretty fascinating stuff. And the guy that invented it all is on this Discord, and I think he's getting married this week, but I'm not for sure. But he's the one that has that, I think it's called Greenskeeper app.
Okay.
But there's another app out there that's free that I'm using right now, and it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Which one are you using?
Oh, gosh. I forgot the name of it.
I see. That's fine.
Yeah, but Jay gave me the link to it, so if we need the link, we can put it out there. But it's awesome. I mean, so your days to cover, you'll figure all that out by your zip code and stuff. So it gives you a pretty good reference when to reapply, even though you think it might be 9 weeks from now, but it's really not. So I even forgot the gentleman's name that came up with that program, University of Nebraska. His name is Brad, but. Hey, if anybody's got any questions, they can raise their hand. We'll bring you out to ask a question.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess just to wrap up from the conversation with Ross, we really do appreciate it, Ross. It's awesome of you to take your time to do that for us. And everybody, stay tuned. We'll keep you posted on when the next episode will be and who the guest will be. I think this series is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I think Jeff Sam will probably come on here sometime when he gets free time about field construction. That's the type of stuff he does and does it very well. He can tell you about sand-based mix, soil mixtures, and all kinds of stuff. So he has a lot of knowledge on that. He did the OU fields for many, many years that you see on TV. He was the man, and he might be able to do a show for us too. So I'll get with him, and we'll have a really exciting lineup coming up.
Very cool.
We have Evie.
Is Evie Lawn different from Evie?
No. I had another one on my, so I could talk on my phone here while I'm driving to go pick up my daughter. So
Oh, gotcha.
just curious if anybody has any apps or recommendations. I know that Ross was saying just kind of look up a website on evaporative transformation on ET, if there's anything that you guys used to track that better so you can accurately put down, you need 1.4 inches this week versus 2.5 inches another week because it's so hot and high wind pressure kind of a thing.
Yeah,
I've
I've got a built-in system with my Maxicom. I've got a weather channel, a weather station hooked up to it. So it tells the humidity, the temperature, the ground temperature, and also the wind speed. But you still have to go over there and give it a base. So once you come up with that base, then it correlates everything to that ET value base that you set in there. So there's got to be
your weather station.
Yeah, it's all hooked into my weather station, or my Maxicom Rainbird system is. But if you have a sports field, you really can't do the ET values on a sports field because it might require it to be watered 20 minutes today, and then tomorrow it might water 60 minutes a station, right? Because it's based on ET value, but you might have practice and you can't get it that wet. So all my sports fields, I do not allow the ET value to take over because it can overwater, and then they can't practice. So it works great for our regular common lawns. It works out really well, really well.
That's cool.
But more times than not, it waters more than less, the ET values. So that's what I've experienced. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. Maybe even I might have to ask Ross if he has links to specific things he was talking about and link them somewhere when we find out exactly if he has a specific place to go find that sort of information.
All based on your county or your city that you live in, because you can type in, Arkansas ET values, and it'll probably pop up there. And then you have to put those in your clock every day. So mine updates 5 times a day on its own. I don't do anything. But once you set the base, the clocks now, I think we picked up a clock today. It was $104, and it had ET value based in it. So it had that capability. It's all done in Wi-Fi. It's a Rainbird clock for $104. So they're out there. They're getting more efficient. So pretty cool stuff.
I'd have to look for one of those. That'd be a lot easier than going in and manually entering stuff every day. I would definitely forget.
Yeah, but it might run in your backyard when you're ready to have a barbecue and you go out there and the water's on.
Well, I don't have just something to calculate even, I guess. With a Rainbird, I guess I don't know if that makes sense, but is there an instrument that will calculate that stuff for you and then you can just override?
Yeah, you can get the regular weather station. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a rain gauge on it, wind speed, and as long as it's hooked up to the Wi-Fi, they will talk to each other. So, there's cost anywhere from $100 all the way to $500 weather station, that will do that for you, but it'll calculate everything for you.
One of those spin is Caleb here. Hello, everybody. The Tempest thing that you can kind of hook up to your home and that keeps track of weather and it sends a signal to your irrigation system to say, hey, well, you're gonna get a lot of rain this week, so it'll send a signal like don't turn it on because you're getting a ton of rain, kind of stuff. And it also takes into account other things like ET and stuff like that. I don't have one. I just know that I've read about it and it looks like pretty cool technology.
Yeah, it is. It's really neat. Really good stuff.
Cool. Well, I am back home. I've got a little one out here ready for me, ready for me to get out of the car. So
Well,
I think
Jordan,
I'm going to exit. You guys can still hang out, do whatever you want, but I'm going to head on out.
all righty. Well, thank you. And thank you to Ross for having this little talk. It's pretty informational. It's pretty good.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll see you guys later. Everybody have a good one.
All right. I think we're
Happy
done.
4th of July.
See you next week.